What's going on, guys? Welcome to Victims and Villains. If you guys are new to our content, we create content like what you're watching right now simply to educate and engage individuals like yourselves on mental health awareness and suicide prevention through pop culture. My name's Captain Nostalgia. I'm a writer, podcaster, and the director of our film festival titled Horrific Hope. If you guys would like more information about what we do, all our podcasts, movie reviews like this one, social media, how to support us financially, and most importantly, our mental health resource library, all of that can be found in the show notes below. We're going to be talking about The Innocents, which you can begin to stream on Shudder exclusively beginning Thursday, August 18th. And if you guys have never had Shudder and are interested in checking out this movie, I will provide a link in the show notes below where you guys can sign up for a free trial for 1 week. The Innocents tells the story of a father who moves his family to a new city when he gets a new job. And the two sisters quickly befriend two other neighborhood kids and find out that between the four of them, they have superpowers. This movie is basically chronicle, and I'm curious how many people have already seen this year, because this movie has been making its way around the festival circuit, and not to mention that it also did have a limited release run earlier this year. But if you've seen this movie, I'm just going to stop the video right now and just say, if this movie reminds you of Chronicle, please just post it below. Make me just give me peace of mind that I'm not the only one that watched this movie and just thought that. The reason that I bring up Chronicle is because Chronicle has a bit of a formula aspect to it that you see a lot of Marvel movies and or even DC movies kind of do when it comes to these superhero origin stories. And this movie really doesn't break away from that mold. Like, from a superhero and or a supernatural aspect, this movie is almost a beat for beat predictable when it comes to those kind of aspects of the narrative. And I feel like I got off on the wrong foot talking about the things that I really didn't like about this movie. And don't get me wrong, while I am very middle of the line when it comes to The Innocents, there is a lot to really like and respect about this movie. This movie is carried by child actors, and sometimes when you have projects that are specifically driven, where you have the adult figures that play very just paper thin characters, or are really like a monarch or a particular type of character, a lot of them can get pushed to the background and the kids get pushed to the front. Sometimes that doesn't always work out in its favor. There are obvious examples. The 80s is full with them, but most recently, obviously, we would point to things like It and Stranger Things. In the vein of those projects, the actors whose names I'm not going to try and pronounce on this video. Like, this is the main cast right here, and I'm not even gonna try and start to attempt to like work my way through or like even pronounce these names. So yeah, this is the cast right here. Acting in this movie, whether you're talking about children or adults, are all phenomenal in this. The acting in this is absolutely top notch, and there are certain sequences in this movie. I'm not going to reveal anything, but perhaps one of the most striking sequences in this movie that just kind of put me in awe is the antagonist of the movie literally has a scene where the actor himself is probably no more than like 10 or 11, and he just breaks down crying, and it's probably one of the best cry sequences I've seen in film in years. When it comes to the overall pacing of this movie, like I said, this movie follows a lot of the superhero formulas, and it brings it into not only the structure of how the story is being told, and it's formulaic in that, but also at the same time it also adopts some of the pacing issues as well, where there's not a whole lot really to do, or the film just kind of seems to run on just a little bit too long. Definitely certain sequences in the second act in particular that just really just drag. that you look at how the first act is structured. The first act is this really tight, really beautiful setup, and the second act really isn't able to mirror that. And as it's going, and as a result, as it's heading into the third act, there are sequences of the third act that just don't feel as climactic as the film is building up to it. And on the flip side of that, it also still has portions of the finale that also just seem to drag on. And I say all of that to say this, and maybe this is me, this is coming from someone that is fatigued with the superhero genre. If you haven't noticed, in the last year, I've stepped back from doing a lot of the coverage of the superhero genre. We have a Marvel department now, which is awesome. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Josh. Because that means now I get to watch these things at my leisure and not have to nitpick them. I say all of that to say this, is that maybe this movie, because of how closely it mirrors a lot of the superhero movies we've been getting, I am bored by those movies, and I was likewise also bored with this movie. Performances are really good, the writing's really solid, the pacing is up and down, but it's just overall, like, I feel like I was just really burnt out after watching this movie and just didn't understand why certain characters made certain choices, and I was bored by this movie. Another thing I think this movie does really well is how it develops its core cast of these kids. The kids, I mean, this is a heartbreaking film. No matter how you want to put it, like, this is a really heartbreaking film, and this is not something that you watch out of, like, you know, comfort. Like, this is a heavy film, and I think the development of all four of these characters are equally compelling, heartbreaking, and just, this film is a really solid coming of age story. Go ahead and give this one a 2.5 out of 5. I think this movie does a lot of really solid things, from its writing, its acting, its character development, and it's a really compelling coming of age story. But it falls really short, not just from being just kind of a formulaic, off-brand superhero movie, but also at the same time it's predictable, and overall it's just really boring. So if you guys have seen The Innocents, you guys were able to catch it in theaters on its festival run, comment below, let me know what you guys think. Make sure that you guys check this out when it hits Shudder beginning August 18th. Comment below and let me know what you guys thought about it afterwards. But let's talk about some mental health. New to our content, Mental Health Moment is where we take a theme of mental health and we talk about it from the movie in which we're reviewing and hopes to deconstruct the stigma surrounding mental health. It deals a lot with peer pressure, and it addresses it in a really grounded way for such a fantastical movie. And I really liked how you get to see how, even from a young age, how you can have two different dynamics with children, where you have the bully and the bullied. I think that even though there's this semblance of, quote, friendship, there's still a lot of that bully versus bullying mentality that's been going through. And sometimes peer pressure, sometimes being a victim of bullying, and just even questioning your own self-esteem, a lot of that stuff really does mess with you into into puberty, adulthood, and really just can be a part of your character. So our main protagonist, Ida, in this movie kind of goes through a lot of peer pressure, and you can kind of see how a lot of that affects her mental health, but also at the same time how it affects her decisions that she makes and kind of her own character development. I think it's a stark reminder that sometimes we need to be reminded that peer pressure isn't just something that you go through when you're a teenager. It's not just something you go through when you're an adult or in college, or these lofty ideas that we have when it comes to peer pressuring and bullying, but it happens at a very young age. Sometimes I know that when I went through peer pressure and when I went through bullying as a kid, I was terrified to speak up. We always say, if you see something, say something, but chances are 9 times out of 10, kids are not going to want to say something because they know that it's going to mean something bad for them. And again, it comes back to this idea is that depression can start as young as 8 to 10. And on top of that, to kind of put this in perspective, for the age group of 10 to 14, there's a suicide rate of over 500 per year that happen just for that demographic. There's a number of things that can stem and cause someone at this very young age to want to even contemplate and consider suicide, but bullying and peer pressure have to be among those deciding factors. And also not listening. I've been saying it a lot recently. We talked about it in Nope, and we've also just talked about it time and time again in things in other movies as well. But listening goes a long way. Sometimes we fail to we talked about this in Pray too. Sometimes we fail to understand the power of just sitting with someone and just listening and letting their story be heard, or letting them vent how much actual value that has. If I was watching this video right now and you've been a victim of peer pressure or bullying, or you're currently experiencing, you're not alone. Or if you or someone you know is struggling and you're watching this with any of those things, or suicide, depression, self-harm, etc., please click the links in the show notes below, and just remember that you are not alone. Thank you guys for watching. The Innocents comes out on Shudder beginning August 18th. Make sure that you guys click that subscribe button below and the bell icon. I'll see you guys soon. Have a good day.